Welcome to Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, Sammika Cosey. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a powerful interview with Miss Anita Lacey, who will share her journey on raising a son with autism from childhood to adulthood. And she'll share all the resources that made a difference along the way. So welcome, Miss Anita Lacey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly excited to be here today.
Awesome, and thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to sit down and to talk with you also. So I know you have a son who has autism. How old is he?
My son is 20 years old, actually.
Okay, and then at what age was he diagnosed with autism?
We had early intervention about 3 years old, I want to say.
Okay. And then when you got that official diagnosis with autism, how did you feel at that time? What was your
Oh,
initial reaction?
so just to set up the narrative here, so we were living in upstate New York at the time. I myself am born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. So around the time that I gave birth to my son, my husband was in the military at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the military doctors were pretty thorough when it came to examinations and things of that nature. And they were the ones that kind of started to discuss with us certain symptoms that Patrick was experiencing early on at 3. For me personally, little things like him not saying certain words that he should be saying at that age was an indicator for me that something might be wrong. So to get the evaluation done and to get the diagnosis for autism for him at that age, it was more of a validating feeling.
Okay.
And although it was overwhelming, it simply confirmed the suspicions that we were having at the time.
And now, as you went ahead and got him diagnosed with autism, what were some of the first steps and things that you did after?
So one of the first steps, of course, was collaborating with the doctors and the schools in order to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we follow through with those early intervention plans. I do believe at that time a IEP was established for Patrick, and it really took a lot as far as us having an organized plan to make sure that we were advocating for him and really being able to voice our opinions as far as what we felt would be helpful, not just for Patrick within the home, but also within the school. So collaborating a lot with the stakeholders and our community and people that was going to be working directly with Patrick was the first step there.
Okay. And now I know you just mentioned the IEP and then the process of that. Before going in for the initial IEP meeting, did you know what that was?
No, I did not. Initially, when Patrick was young, I knew nothing of what autism was. I could not even define it if anyone were to ask. But I think that dynamic was the same for me and for my husband. Truth be told, most of the doctors didn't even know how to
Mm-hmm.
define it. And my son was born in 2004. So
Okay.
a lot of them were quite confused on what this would actually mean for Patrick moving forward. Um, so that was a struggle in itself, the just not knowing, the unknown, let alone what a long-term plan would be like or what the outcome of emotional support would be like for him. So I want to say it wasn't until much later, once my husband was done with the military, he did his 4 years. We came back to Chicago, and that's when I really started to buckle down and actually educate myself about autism and what it would actually mean for my son and for our family.
And then how old was your son around that time?
So, if for around 8 years old, I want to say, yeah, when I decided that I needed to do more. But I don't want to say that it was just that simple because it wasn't. It was challenging for me it took me having to understand that I no longer had the hat of being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
I had to redefine what my parental role was going to look like. And that's when I discovered that I was not only just a parent, but also an advocate for my son.
And
That that I'm
what
sorry,
has
go
been
ahead.
your experience with being an advocate for your son?
Uh, Fighting is the experience. It's like a push-pull dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
It can tend to be a cycle, but it's necessary, especially when it came to my son. It became a personalized agenda. It eventually turned into a passion. That has been my experience with advocating for my son. But I definitely want to note that the advocacy was defined by my son's situation, knowing that he had autism, which was later changed to intellectual disability as a primary diagnosis, autism secondary, and severe speech delay was the third diagnosis for him. And it really defined my role that yes, I need to advocate for my son because my son is unable to advocate for himself.
Now, what were some of the challenges that you experienced, especially with transitioning, moving from one place to another?
So one of the challenges, of course, would be educating myself on it. The resources at the time were not widely available, although they have many websites like the Autism, I believe it's .org, that has resources there, but they were very vague as far as the information. Most of them were not applicable to my situation, let alone my son's. Culture, of course, plays a huge factor. Um, our environment played a huge factor. Where we lived, there are certain environments that we lived in. So it really took me actually having to go back to school just to educate myself on the world in itself so I could learn exactly what was going on with my son. My first step or mission, if you will, was to be able to understand my son's language. Okay, which again, that information is just not out there like that. To understand a person's communication, how they communicate, their facial cues, their tones, and things of that nature. Me enrolling in school and actually taking psychology opened up a better understanding for me to fully understand the way my son was trying to communicate. And in addition to that, the level of frustration he was experiencing trying to communicate and speak when he was experiencing that disconnect or barrier, if you will, in order to do that. So first challenge was definitely the resources and the education being readily available for me. Um, my environment was a challenge. We lived in Chicago, Illinois. Some of the schools were not equipped to care for my son. Unfortunately, some of those schools today still struggle with that. So I had to do a lot of research and find areas that actually cater to children and adults, for that matter, with mental disabilities. Finances, not having, the money to pay for certain resources or programs, which are quite expensive. Devices that are needed to communicate, those are expensive. Apps that are needed to be on said devices are very expensive. That was definitely a challenge, having to see the cost to care for someone who has a mental disability. And those type of challenges can weigh on a family.
So, with putting all of that together, all of the challenges that you were facing as a family, what pushed you to continue to go forward and then to ensure that your son had the best resources possible and the best education?
Yes, my push and motivation was my son. It was wholeheartedly my son. To see his struggle, knowing that he needed someone to advocate for him, that became my motivation. Not too long after me attending school, I did have a daughter. I actually have two children. Um, she as well started to have symptoms that were associated with developmental delay. And also to see her struggle, um, it really motivated me to keep going as far as educating myself and not just looking for a program or a person, meaning a therapist or someone in that regard, to quote unquote fix my situation. I wanted to do my part as well. And at that time, when my daughter was 3 years old, Easter Seal actually stepped in such a big way to provide services for my daughter. Um, and we have been truly grateful for the support that they have given to my children. But to see them advocate the way that they were advocating for my kids kind of unlocked my passion as well. And that's when I started to have this motivation to not only be there for my children and get them the help that they deserve and need, but also I want to do that for other parents, especially those of color.
Yes. And what has that experience been like for you with not just going through your own personal journey, but being a part of someone else's journey?
To be honest, it has been a fantastic experience. It comes with challenges, no doubt, but I enjoy it. I cannot deny it that it brings me joy. It is fulfilling to be able to do that. But it did take me putting myself in that position to be able to help and support families on that regard. So before I became a mental health therapist, I was actually a paraprofessional where I worked at a program and a facility. It was essentially a school for children, teens, and adults. They keep them until they're 21 years old. And that allowed me to have access to parents. Okay. And at this particular time, we were living in a suburban area. So, me being placed there, being an African American woman, I was able to connect with other families of color, and they were able to see me and say, hey, she looks like me. She kind of looks like me. She looks like a family member, and she actually is dealing with the same thing that I'm dealing with. I want to listen to her. I think I could trust her. And I think with me being there, I was able to kind of like bridge that gap in certain programs to be able to connect and reach other families. And it allowed them to open up and share their story with me. And to be honest, I think a lot of that passion, I could credit that to other teachers and paraprofessionals who were there for me and my son, who stepped up and wanted to help when it came to my son's IEP and making sure that he was meeting his goals, but also making sure that the skills he was learning in the schools and in the programs were being transferred over within the home.
And then when you refer to some of the things that the teachers and other paraprofessionals were able to do to assist you, can you elaborate on some of those resources?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What was interesting about this dynamic, uh, the IEP meetings and going into my son's classroom just to observe, I started to learn that there were a lot of things that my son was excelling at in the classroom that he was not excelling at within the home. It was actually a huge eye opener. I actually let other parents, I kind of encouraged them that you need to sit in the classrooms because some of the issues that you may be struggling with your child with, you may find out that they're able to capably do it independently within the classroom. Okay. And when I was able to see that, and I was able to see how structured the classroom was and his daily routines within the classrooms and the power of visuals, how it motivated him to do certain activities and certain tasks, that's when it clicked that, okay, I need to transfer this type of dynamic over within my home. So there were paraprofessionals and teachers that I collaborated with, and all it took is me asking. It wasn't much. I literally asked, hey, those visuals that he has on his desk, can I have a copy as well? And they said, sure, no problem. the same visuals that was on his desk, I literally plastered them all over the house. I mean, I had visuals for everything, but they were important because there were things within the home that I was struggling with Patrick with. But again, it took a lot of transparency for me to own up to the fact that
Mm-hmm.
these were things that I was struggling with. So, simple things. Well, I don't want to define it as simple, but things like Patrick eloping, I struggled with that. So having a visual on the door that literally said stop helped, because this was a visual he was used to seeing at school, on the school doors, on certain exits in the building, and he fully understood what they were. Although he wasn't able to actually say these words, he knew them as far as it being a visual and what it meant. So me being able to transfer visuals within the home, schedules within the home, and actually using his AAC device. I actually stress this a lot, okay? Children who have these devices, parents, please use them. Take them out of their book bags when they get home from school, sit it on the kitchen table, and just start there. They will gravitate to it, they will use it. I had to start utilizing the same tools, the same resources that he was using within school, within the home. And I'm being as honest as I possibly can, it changed my son. It allowed him to become comfortable. He felt quite familiar with the things that he saw within his classroom. They were in his home now, and he was able to excel in that regard. You know, whatever skill that they're working on in the classroom, I wanted to know what that skill was so I could reinforce it within the home.
And then how long did it take for you to transition and utilize those schedules within your home and to ensure that you were pushing the use of the AAC device and then putting
So
those visuals like the stop sign?
yeah, so didn't take long at all. It was quite easy, just requesting it from the teachers or from the parents. They would literally create a profile full of visuals for me within a day and send them back home with Patrick. And I was already locked in, so I already knew what needed to be done. Um, the amount of time it takes Patrick to adjust was quite small as well, because, like I stated, these were the same visuals he was using every day at school, anyways. You know, and I want to say by the next IEP meeting, which is typically 6 months to a year, we were able to increase the goals, you know, where we're actually starting to cross things out and say he's accomplished this goal. Now let's move on to the next step. So, for example, one of the biggest challenges for Patrick was being potty trained. Okay. Patrick didn't become potty trained until he was 7 years old. We were able to finally achieve it with the help of his paraprofessional, where she gave me the visuals that he uses at school to go to the bathroom, and I put them within the home. I put it on the bathroom door. I put them in the bathroom, and it worked. It finally
Amazing.
stuck, you know, because again, when I was able to sit in the classroom, I found out he uses the bathroom at school, but he wouldn't use the bathroom at home. And I, of course, as parents, why is that the case? What is happening? And that's when a parent told me, like, look, you have to put the same visuals in the bathroom, do the same thing that I'm doing with him in the classroom, and he's going to do it at home. She guaranteed it, and she was right.
That's amazing to hear, especially with you going in and sitting in the classroom and making that request for the visuals and then ensuring that you were able to utilize it at home too. So I know
Yeah.
your son is 21 years old. Can you tell us a little bit more about your transitions from like elementary school to high school until when he was done with high school?
So from elementary school, again, it took a lot of trusting the staff that's working with your children. And I know that's a big step for a lot of families. Like I stated, when I became a para, I actually placed myself in the school that my son was attending. Okay. I chose to do that. I don't recommend it for every family, but that was the route that I took. Um, and with doing so, I was able to meet the teachers and parents and even work with them. Okay. So, me being there, I know how challenging it is for parents to really trust what a teacher is telling them in an IEP meeting. I witness it, I see it when parents leave IEP meetings and they're just distraught and have this sense of hopelessness. And after viewing that, it again, it encourages me to continue down this path to try to normalize the things that they're going through by me just being there, showing them that, you know, I am a person of color. I know what you're talking about. I come from the city of Chicago. I've struggled as a parent. I want to help you through this. I want you to trust me with your child. Okay. So it took me a lot of trusting the other staff members with my son and the direction they would recommend for Patrick to go. So for transitioning, it definitely depended on Patrick's success and us all collaborating to make sure that his goals that are within the IEP are being met so he can go to the next step. It also took a lot of experimenting. It's one thing for Patrick to be in a classroom meant for students with disabilities, but we also wanted to test his capacity to be in a traditional classroom, which we did. And I know a lot of parents may feel skeptical about that, but I often try to remind parents to not put the disability first. He's still a human. He's still a person. Okay. So I want to give him the same opportunities that any other child would get. So allowing him to experience what school life is like in a traditional classroom, I didn't want to deny that experience for him. So being in a program led to him being in a traditional classroom in elementary school. And if he got to a point where it became a bit too overwhelming, we would transition back to the program because that's where he was most comfortable. However, we kind of like branched out a little bit more with him having more opportunities to be out in the community and going on trips and going on walks and simply going from there by increasing his skills and increasing his communication skills. So his transition has been fantastic. The people around him, his teachers, the paraprofessionals, which we collaborate every day to this day. We have each other's cell phone numbers. We talk on a regular basis when it comes to Patrick. And anything that they feel that Patrick may have the capacity for, we as parents always make sure that we are open-minded to the idea. So Patrick has gone from being at a program in elementary school to now he's at a high school where he actually goes to work at a skating rink on Tuesdays.
And how is that going?
Huge difference. It is going, and again, there's a lot of repetition there in order to get him to that. A lot of schedules, a lot of visuals for him, but he's there. So a day for Patrick on a Tuesday when he actually knows that he has to work, he gets up in the morning and puts on his slacks, his polos, his work shoes, and he's ready to go. And he's there doing simple tasks like lacing up the shoes at the skating rink. And he has his AAC device with him in order to communicate anything that he needs. And he always has a pair that's there with him that's not just supervising him, but actually helping him as well. So he enjoys it. I think at this point in Patrick's life, because we reinforce the structure and reinforce the schedules, he thrives in that regard. It is his strong suit at this point. It allows him to move forward. So as long as we're keeping that thing going for him, he can excel in anything.
I love that. I love that. Now I want to go back into, I know you mentioned some of the skills for when he was younger. Can you briefly talk about some of the skills that he was struggling with versus where you see him at now?
Yes, Patrick is a completely different person than what he was when he was a child. All of the characteristic traits of a child with autism were there. Tippy-toe walking, delayed speech, hyperactive behavior, unable to sleep, high energy that was not really being spent. Huge challenges for him. Not being potty trained, going to the bathroom on his own without any help. Huge challenges for him. So there was so much there that was a struggle for him. So even with the tippy toe walking, we've talked to many doctors and we started to learn how damaging that is on the feet. I know a lot of parents just look at it as, oh, it's just part of him, his disability. But unfortunately, it wears on the ankles, on the feet. And if you don't address it, it's just going to get worse over time. So we worked with doctors in order to help him in that regard. The speech, having his AAC device, it's an expensive device to have, and the app that's used for him to communicate on is a few $1,000s, and I'm grateful that our school district actually stepped in and paid for the entire thing. So that was something that we didn't have to come out of our pocket for. Getting a handle on the energy, okay, the sleepless nights, okay. We definitely had to collaborate with his primary care doctor in order to stabilize that for him, because something like that was definitely affecting his quality of life, being able to get up in the morning and go to school. Staying up at 3 in the morning and just sending him to school is not healthy for him, let alone anybody.
Yes.
And again, because I've worked in this field, I see parents do that all the time. All the time. And
now,
I didn't.
No, go ahead.
And I just was going to add, I definitely wanted to change that dynamic for him. So talking with the doctors and working on having a sleep schedule. And I don't necessarily recommend medication, but if it's needed, it's something to consider and research about before you define if that's going to be applicable for you. But other healthy ways for my son was getting him to burn off the energy, having him exercise, having a little exercise machine in the home to kind of help him burn off that extra energy that he was having before bedtime. That worked for our family.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate and thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, sharing your experience with collaboration, and then making sure that you're generalizing those skills that your son was doing at home, also in school, and also within the community. It was a pleasure having a conversation with you. And for everyone who is listening, I want us to all commit to learning something new and then taking action in the lives, just to go out and to make a difference, not just in our own lives, but also in the lives of other people, because nothing changes if nothing changes, and we all have the power to make a difference. Let's change the narrative.